Hi everyone. Hi. So as my name's up on the screen, so I'm Jack Newton, Head of Content Protection and Enforcement at the Publishers Association. It's exciting. This is the second year in a row I've done something here, so it's exciting. Maybe if I do a good enough job, I'll complete the hat trick next year. So it remains to be seen. But yeah, really excited to be talking to you today. So during this talk, I'm going to delve into the past, talk about the present and the future roles of shadow libraries in the hungry and unscrupulous world and business of training large language models. Looking at the schedule today, sounds like that's pretty much been the theme. So please feel free to ask questions at the end. If we run out of time, I'm manning the PA stand during the coffee break, so please come and have a chat, ask me any questions. And I'm sure many of you are going to know the Publishers Association. We're the member organisation for UK publishing, representing companies of all sizes and specialisms. Today, our 160 plus members produce digital and print books, research journals, educational resources across all the genres and subjects. And we bring our members together. We provide them with the information they need to find solutions to problems, and we campaign to achieve them. We exist to champion publishing to the wider world, and we want to provide our members with everything that they need to thrive as a business. The PA have worked very hard to be, I guess, the industry mark of excellence when it comes to content protection and enforcement. And we have a specialised team offering support to members in that area. And very briefly about myself, 17 years ago, it seems crazy, it's that long, I began a journey joining the brand protection, anti-piracy world, and this was just at a live streaming and brand-specific content consultancy, specialising in, it was in sports and in films. I joined the publishing industry in 2014. I worked for Springer Nature, and for a number of years I've had links with the Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit, otherwise known as PIPCU. Now, the content protection work of the PA, I'll briefly run through. So our work protecting members from IP crime is fairly wide-ranging, and there's multiple options available. You can hear about all of them a little bit later. We've pretty much tried every option over the years, and sometimes it does take all those options to have any sort of effect. As I mentioned, there's a very broad spectrum, and this can start off with a relatively simple sending of a takedown notice for an infringement, asking an infringer to remove the content that infringes copyright. And this can go right up to the global law enforcement operation, resulting in the seizure of pirate domains, the arrest of pirate site owners. But more generally, the work that our team performs includes support for member companies, helping them to tackle and disrupt physical and, 99% now is digital piracy threats. We collaborate very closely with law enforcement and government agencies, and we seek cooperation with organisations, the internet infrastructure, so the organisations that host websites that allow you to register a website. Another area of our work involves research, and that's the seeking to understand key piracy threats, identifying patterns, methods of consumption across all the different publishing sectors. And that includes instructing studies and surveys to assess the where, the why, the how, and most importantly, how much. And finally, our copyright infringement portal that it was designed for our members to manage their piracy threats, basically. It's a system that allows them to monitor their book titles and send takedowns for infringements. Now, I put together a timeline. I thought this was quite important to sort of demonstrate piracy milestones, huge moments in digital technology, and the births of the shadow libraries. And altogether, this has shaped the publishing landscape over 500 years. Now, it might surprise you to learn book piracy goes back to the 1500s, in England, I should say. I've seen some text that describes piracy at that time as rampant, and this was allegedly due to Queen Elizabeth I, who gave chosen printing presses the rights to publish certain foundational texts, such as the Bible and the alphabet, and the printing presses that did not have these rights then just went and printed them anyway, and piracy was born, and I think a few heads were cut off, that type of thing. During the 1800s, America was known as the piracy capital of the Western world. Thousands of books published in Europe were reproduced in America as cheap paperbacks. Now, zooming way ahead to 1971, this is the invention of the e-book. It's commonly credited to Michael Hart, who created the e-book by typing out the Declaration of Independence, which seems quite apt considering the date tomorrow. Then again, fast forward to 1993, the World Wide Web was open to the public, transforming pretty much every aspect of our lives. The first known website for sharing copyrighted content, you may have heard of it, it was called Napster. This was established in 1999, but going to 2004, which is what I believe it was the first shadow library called library.nu. It was a popular pirate site which at the time hosted about 400,000 books, and this was later shut down in 2012. 2008 saw the birth of the first, I call it the first big dog pirate network. You may have heard of it, LibGenesis or LibGen. That subsequently absorbed everything that library.nu had, and it became the sort of functional successor to library.nu. 2008, 2009, ebooks were still quite a new thing, quite a new offering in the UK industry. They were certainly helped by the launch of the first Kindle in late 2007. And in this time, sales were sort of rapidly increasing year on year at such a fast pace that it made it really difficult to understand sales lost to digital piracy. 2009, Z Library. Again, you may have heard of this, but back then it was known as Bookfinder. This was the newest kid on the block in terms of shadow libraries. I'll delve into the specifics on Z Library a little bit later as well. 2011, Sci-Hub was founded in Kazakhstan by a person called Alexandra Elbakian, and this was allegedly in response to the rising costs of research papers behind paywalls. And this is one of those rare occasions where a pirate site owner is not only known, but actually openly promotes themselves, trying to justify the illegal activity on their platform. And Sci-Hub actually goes a little bit beyond piracy and also sort of into cybercrime, and that's to do with the ways that they obtain their content. 2015 now, May 2015, the UK High Court granted the Publishers Association, it was an application under Section 97A of the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988, and this was for a blocking order against enforced against the main ISPs in the UK. This order applied to 7 websites, which were found to contain substantial amounts of infringing content, and included in the list of blocked websites were some of the early domains belonging to LibGen and to Z Library. The first large language model is generally considered to be GPT-1. This was introduced by OpenAI in 2018. We'd have to wait a few more years, though, before LLMs were sort of really gained in popularity and use. And I guess to mention the title of this talk, you could argue that the age of the LLMs didn't really start until 2022, you could say. And talking of the year 2022, This was quite a defining year for me personally in my career, and I think sort of in the content protection sphere in publishing. So in an action that was the first of its kind in publishing, the shadow library known as Z Library was taken down and the operators of the site were arrested. However, as a direct consequence of this action, I should say positive action, the newest shadow, the newest of what's known as a shadow library called Anna's Archive was launched the same year. 2023 to 2025, where we find ourselves now, it's been rather busy. 2023, a class action complaint in the US District Court, Northern District of California, San Francisco Division, was filed by a group of authors against Meta after their books were used in the training of Meta's Llama language model. And this is referred to as Kadri versus Meta. At the end of 2024, another UK High Court blocking order granted the PA's application, and this was a new type of blocking order. Again, first of its kind in the UK, and this is because it targeted copycat domains. These are domains that trade off existing pirate brands that wouldn't have been covered in the previous legal blocking mechanisms. So this order allowed continue the blocking of the sites first blocked in 2015, as well as all of the copycat domains and a number of newly added domains, and this order impacts sites and networks belonging to LibGen, Z Library, and Anna's Archive has been added to the list as well. At the end of 2024 as well, the UK government launched the consultation on copyright and AI just before Christmas. So you probably know all this. The consultation focused on the proposed reforms to UK copyright law to address the challenges posed by AI. The PA submitted a very comprehensive response to this consultation before it closed in February 2025. And not even a month after that closed, American Magazine published an article that focused on Meta's admission that LibGen, Library Genesis, was used to train its large language model. And this was along with a tool that could be used by authors and publishers to reveal the widespread unauthorized use of their works in the training of LLMs. This brought the presence of shadow libraries into a much sharper focus. So there's 500 years of piracy. I suppose you could say there's been 20 years of shadow libraries, and I could almost have done a monthly timeline probably of the last couple of years, just of the sort of the pace things are going. So what exactly is a shadow library? There's quite a few terms along with that. It's also known as e-libraries. I sometimes call them giant or major pirate networks. These terms are used to describe a website or a group of websites that are engaged in the mass illegal sharing of books and or scientific articles. The level of infringing cases on these pirate e-library sites can run into the millions, and the networks use fairly sophisticated methods to profit from piracy. Now, it's important to make the distinction that these pirate e-libraries are not libraries in the true sense of the word. Let's make that very clear. These are not libraries at all. Genuine libraries license and buy books and have legitimate purpose to serve as a centre for obtaining information and getting stories out to the world, something my organisation, the PA, supports. In terms of how shadow libraries obtain their content, it appears to be a mixture of user-uploaded content, sometimes book scanning to digitize the print book, and in the case of one library, they steal content from publisher databases by using compromised login credentials from universities and scientific institutions. The operators behind shadow libraries are generally unknown, and those that are known are located in really unhelpful countries where it's difficult to enforce against them. So the domain form of a shadow library looks a little bit like this. These are the big four. Simple, sometimes quite bold branding, and quite a pretty easy website to navigate through. These websites allow quick access to millions of books and articles, and these books and articles can be downloaded to your device anywhere in the world with a strong enough internet connection within a few clicks. Now, I'm sure some of you recognise some of these sites. I'm not accusing any of you of piracy, but you've probably seen these in the news. And if you've heard me talk before, I've mentioned these quite a lot. So ZLibrary, Sci-Hub, Anna's Archive, and LibGen or LibGenesis. So these are the biggest shadow libraries, both in terms of the content they offer, the site visits they accumulate, and the negative impact that they have on publishing. The approximate combined global monthly website visits across all of the domains belonging to these four shadow libraries is around 170 million. Wikipedia is said to have more than 63 million pages. It's regularly ranked as one of the top 10 websites in the world, with over 11 million books and 84 million article web pages on the ZLibrary alone. That site is 50% bigger than Wikipedia. LibGen is around the same, maybe slightly less than ZLibrary. Sci-Hub's approximately got 90 million articles, and Anna's Archive, which copies all the other three, allegedly contains over 51 million books and over 98.5 million articles, which is way more than double the web pages of Wikipedia. The sheer size of these pirate networks is fairly staggering. And the way the shadow libraries are set up, it goes way beyond what I would consider the norm of a pirate site, and they are becoming akin to an organised criminal network or an organised crime group. The Interpol definition of an organised crime group is that they are involved in many different types of criminal activities spanning several countries. These activities may include trafficking in people, drugs, illicit goods and weapons, armed robbery, counterfeiting and money laundering. Now, I don't actually know whether these other pretty awful crimes are part of the wider network for these pirate sites. I mean, certainly money laundering. I'm yet to see a case where, I sound like I'm looking forward to seeing a case where it's involved in like people trafficking. I'm not at all. But you know, I'm yet to see any sort of additional crimes like that. But you know, these are organised criminal networks. And behind the website front of a shadow library can be a very complex network of domains, subdomains, servers, and associated companies within a convoluted internet infrastructure, which can be visualized in this image on the left. So this image is the one time as what ZLibrary looked like at one time, the ZLibrary network. And to break this down, and it's so vast, that's about as big as you could see. I mean, I think if you walked right up to it, you'd see exactly what's on it. But it contains 250, or contained, I should say, 250 surface web domains, a further 7 domains as part of their dark web activity. There are 3,686 subdomains within the network. IP servers were found in Germany, the US, the Netherlands, Finland, UK, China, Belize, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Iran, Russia, Ireland, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Panama, and South Korea. There are also 42 companies associated with the wider network. And ZLibrary at its peak was attracting more than 175 million site visits, which at the time was comparable with the French Amazon marketplace domain, amazon.fr. Now, while shadow libraries claim not to be set up to profit, money can be earned through various means, online advertising and user donations. They can have multiple payment accounts through the conventional routes that you and I use every day, but also cryptocurrency and online vouchers as well. And while the exact amounts aren't known, the Z-Library investigation revealed that this network could earn anywhere between £7,000 and £30,000 in daily income. The Z-Library network was shut down for a period, and the site operators were arrested, as I mentioned earlier, and this was an action, the first of its kind, in the ongoing fight against publishing industry piracy. And this action involved Interpol, FBI, a few other national law enforcement bodies, the Authors Guild, and we had the honour of being part of that too at the PA. It's important as it demonstrated the power of coordinated and targeted international law enforcement action, and it shows that public and private sectors can work together quite effectively to combat a major piracy threat. So how can we stop this? Well, I mentioned what happened with Z-Library, but they came back 4 months later, annoyingly. But publishing organisations can, to some extent, do everything in the disruption box themselves. Sending takedowns, reporting pirate links, pirate listings to Google and other search engines, to remove the search results, target hosting providers and domain registrars within the website infrastructure, and many payment providers have processes that allow rights holders to report pirate sites when they're abusing their payment services. One of my favourite methods is engaging with domain registrars and registry organisations who have at their disposal what I call the domain kill switch. They can suspend a domain immediately, globally, without any fuss, if they so wish, but they often do need a little bit of encouragement. As you have just heard, police around the world have greater powers to seize domains, shut down payment accounts, and arrest site operators. In the UK, we have the City of London Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit, a specialist national police unit focused on tackling IP crime, and they work very closely with the creative industries, including us. This is often the first step in the UK to escalate an IP crime case to a global level. I'm talking Interpol. Who are the international hub of coordination for law enforcement. Sadly, Hollywood paints them slightly differently, and in reality, they don't go around with international licenses to kill. That's the job for the national law enforcement bodies. They can raise internationally recognised warrants or notices for suspects linked to crime, and the spiciest of these is the Red Notice, which is an alert for the arrest of an internationally wanted individual, and this was the notice used against the operators of Z-Library. Finally, in terms of legal action, there are criminal and civil routes under national copyright laws with possible outcomes in being awarded damages, or one of my favourite mechanisms is website blocking, and that's website blocking via a country's main internet service providers. The PA can help publishing organisations coordinate and advise on all of these options. And sometimes the simplest goal is just to limit the access to pirated content. But ways of accessing content can change. One of the newest forms of accessing information is through AI large language models. What's the purpose of a large language model? I asked Google's Gemini for the answer, as I believe it would be able to explain it in a much better way than I could. So the next few words are not my own, but they are AI generated. And the response I got was, the primary purpose of a large language model, LLM, is to understand and generate human-like text, and increasingly other forms of content. It goes on to say, they achieve this by being trained on vast amounts of text data, and so on. Do they indeed? LLMs aren't necessarily bad. There are plenty of positives. I've just shown one of them. When I can't think of how to say something, I will often put it into Google Gemini and say, I always finish with please, because you never know what could happen. But as we know, some of the data that language models are trained on has very questionable origins. And this is what we're talking about here. Some language model developers utilize the freely accessible data available on pirate sites for training purposes, and Meta is currently front and center of this dispute. Now, this is the big question, isn't it? And we can speculate on multiple answers. What is the attraction of shadow libraries being used in the training phase of AI large language models? I'm going to focus on three aspects, which just so happen to all start with A. I did try and mix it up a little bit, but these sounded quite nice, to be perfectly honest. Access. You heard just now the amount of content that these networks contain. You know how quickly and easy it is to find the content that you want. The millions of works from multiple different sectors conveniently all in one place. It's an attractive pull, isn't it? Not only for web users, anywhere in the world, but there are data sets in text format readily available for LLM developers to use too. Attitude. Digital piracy has long had a victimless association. It's not seen as a proper crime. And a number of big tech companies with LLMs seem to adopt a similar attitude and completely miss the wider context surrounding the origins of what is freely accessible data used in the training process. Just because something is freely available, it doesn't mean that you can just take it and reuse it. Meta in particular has a checkered past when it comes to knowing that technical processes that they have, use dubious and harmful methods to deliver content. I was on an aeroplane. I was celebrating my anniversary with my wife. We went away. We were on an aeroplane. She pulled my attention to an article in a magazine, and it was talking about an investigation in 2021 into Meta's Instagram algorithm, which were found to be actively promoting eating disorder content to young girls. While not exactly the same or as physically harmful, is it at all surprising to learn through the Kadri versus Meta case that Meta had knowledge that their developers were training llama using pirate shadow libraries and didn't really think about the impact or consequences? What I find is absolutely bonkers is that Meta businesses, Facebook and Instagram, have copyright infringement policies and takedown procedures that they, we submit books to via that way and they're taken down. Anyway, lastly, avoidance. By training language models with content on book pirate sites, tech companies aim to avoid what I believe they would view as the hassle of having to manage multiple licensing agreements with legitimate publishing organizations. There would also be the costs associated with these agreements, and why should they need to pay anything when all the content they can obtain, it's all available for free on a shadow library? So sticking with Meta, and to recap what we know. We know about the ongoing case in the US with Silverman, Kadri and Golden bringing a class action against Meta, alleging multiple violations of the US Digital Millennium Copyright Act. We know Meta trained llama by exposing it to massive amounts of text from various sources, including author and publisher content being pirated on shadow libraries. We know American magazine The Atlantic published an article focusing on Meta's admission that LibGen was used to train its LLMs, as well as a tool that could be used by authors and publishers to reveal the widespread unauthorized use of their works in a training of LLMs. I've put up a quote from Katrina, the General Counsel and Deputy CEO of the Publishers Association, on our response following the release of that article and tool. Following that article, the existence of shadow libraries is now more widely known. The number of emails that I got of people being like, well, what are you doing about this? So I then had to go back and say, well, we've known about this for quite some time. This is what we've done. This is what we can do. And then they say, well, why is it still online? It's a frequent conversation, and it will continue to be a frequent conversation. And what we do know as well is that we need to do something. But what is the next step? What can we do in the UK? So So work to reduce the harmful impact of shadow libraries is and will be a key part of the PA's content protection strategy for years to come. Every case is different, but I think a strategy needs to be multifaceted but also flexible to deal with all of the different components of a threat and all of the potentially rapid technical changes that can happen, particularly with threats of a digital nature. Something that perhaps underpins every case is ensuring that we have detailed, up-to-date data and intelligence of a problem. The PA is undertaking a comprehensive analysis of titles exposed to LLM training via LibGen, and an analysis of how this has been used to train on the training of AI models. We've been working with a company known as Valent, who engage with language models at developer level rather than through the user interface, and they can evidence hundreds of pages of verbatim extracts from a single book. So the comparison you can see is a verbatim paragraph from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. If you can't, no, you should be able to do that. If you can't quite read it, it's the part of the book where Harry observes some other children being wowed by the Aston Martin of Brooms, the Nimbus 2000, in a shop window. Valent's technology is able to identify the relevant sequences in the underlying data sets before reproducing the sequences as text. This text is then matched against extracts from the original text, and where the output text is highlighted in yellow, this means it is identical to input text. Valent were able to evidence hundreds of pages of verbatim from this single novel alone. And this and other verbatim reproductions of extracts from the first Harry Potter novel from Valent's analysis are included as part of the PA's response to the AI consultation, which is also available on our website. Now, unfortunately, I do not think that shadow libraries are just going to disappear, not without a fight anyway. So we need to keep plugging away at them, trying all aspects of disruption as publishing organizations and through law enforcement and legal actions. Throughout the Z-Library case, investigators kept reiterating to me how important it was for rights holders to continue sending takedowns to pirate sites and to the associated internet infrastructure, the website infrastructure, because this maintains the copyright infringement evidence base needed to support actions when the opportunity arises. Language models, they're certainly here to stay, and I think we're going to see even more development in that area. Will developers involved in the training of LLMs return to use shadow libraries again? I hope not. I mean, maybe they already have. I don't know. But what is clear is that Meta are clearly infringing authors and publishers' copyright on an enormous scale, and that can't go unchallenged. The PA and its members are actively considering the next steps in this regard, how best to use the data gathered from these projects, and what any potential legal challenge against Meta would look like. At the moment, shadow libraries and LLMs, I think, are still two very different beasts. But you could say LLMs need shadow libraries more than shadow libraries need LLMs. Thank you very much.